By far the biggest set of events, I think, in the last, certainly since June, has involved the device formerly known as the cell phone. You know, the new kind of smartphones that are coming out and the platforms for them and the plans for them are less and less and less about voice, as you know, and more and more about what the wireless industry loves to call data. Just think about what we've seen since June. The first thing we saw was the iPhone, which did not challenge the business model of the wireless industry because, of course, it was locked into one of the Soviet ministries, AT&T, much to the chagrin of a lot of people, but it's a highly significant development nonetheless because, as far as I know, the iPhone is the first phone ever brought to market with the cooperation of a U.S. carrier in which the carrier agreed to have nothing to do with the design of the phone. If you hate the iPhone, if you like the iPhone, it's all Apple. And interestingly, and I don't know how many of you went through this process, Apple has even taken charge of the customer relationship. Because when you activate your iPhone, you don't do it in the store. Even if you bought it in an AT&T store, you go home, you plug it into your, trusty Windows or Mac computer, fire up iTunes, and there's a screen that goes by quickly with the AT&T logo, but you're primarily in Apple world at that point, picking your plan and activating the phone and so forth. The other is that the FCC agreed under a lot of lobbying from Google to auction off this new bunch of spectrum with different rules than have been imposed in the past, rules that, while they didn't quite go all the way toward Google's specifications, will, if they hold up and are not challenged in court and all successfully, will allow really much more open use of that spectrum than we have in the cell phone industry today. Will allow people who just come up with a great idea for a handset or software or service to get it on your phone much more easily and run it over that network. Then, of course, the other huge thing was Android, the Google-written operating system for phones, open operating system, and the big alliance they've put together. We don't know how that's going to work out. I know there's been a lot of rapture about it. I think it's a great idea. I have had a long series of conversations with Google about this as their thinking has evolved. And I think it's a great idea. I mean, obviously they're interested in this. They want to sell as much advertising and have people use as many of their services as possible. So it's not altruism on their part, but it doesn't have to be. If it works out the way they are hoping, again, we would get to, on the wireless device, to where we are on the PC, where you can change your PC, you can change your software, and the company supplying the bandwidth to you doesn't have to give you permission, doesn't collect anything, doesn't even have to know about it. As Ken mentioned, we had the development where Verizon has announced what's essentially, after deciding not to join the Google Alliance, although they say they still may, they've got a two-track future that they outline. On one track, you still go to the Verizon store, sign up with the nice lady, and wait 45 minutes for somebody to wait on you who knows nothing about the products. And you buy a product, you buy a handset and a bunch of services and a very fast talking conversation in which you walk out, you've signed a 2-year contract, and you've got this phone and you don't really know how it works. And it's the current system. But now they're going to open up a second track where any of you in this room who wants to make a handset or to make software to run on a handset or to offer a service, a video service, a music service, whatever, to run on a handset, you, according to Verizon, are going to be able to do that without their approval and without cutting them in for any money. All you're going to have to do is meet certain specs that they're going to publish. Specs for how you can be worthy enough to run your software or your hardware on their network. I think it's a very promising move. There's all kinds of theories about why they did it. Some people think they did it because it's tied into the battle over this new spectrum and they want to be able to show they're open. Some people think they did it because they're under pressure from the Google initiative and the iPhone. Why would the iPhone have anything to do with it? Well, it's hard to generate devices of that kind of new caliber that Apple has set in the current system. It may be easier if you throw it open and let clever, innovative people. They might even get an iPhone on Verizon, you never know, under that system. But I think another reason is that there's a colossal burden on them of customer support. The customer service calls they take are just an enormous and growing burden, and to the extent that they can just have to be responsible for the quality of the network and not responsible for how do I get through the menus on this phone that LG made, that could be a real saving to them. So there's a whole combination of reasons. I think it's hopeful, but again, I think the devil is in the details, and we're just going to have to see. What if they publish specs that are kind of onerous? Remember, their current control over these wireless networks is all based around the theory that they're protecting the validity of the network, the integrity of the network. So even today, if you go to them and say, I've invented something that's 10 times better than any phone you have, if you can get a meeting with them, they'll give you a big, and I'm not kidding, something this thick that you have to adhere to. You have to change the design of your phone to adhere to this. And then they have a certification lab that you have to go through. And when I visited Verizon Wireless some years ago, there was a big sign on the wall that said, it's not a phone till Lou says it's a phone. And Lou was the guy that ran their lab. Now, one of the things they announced in this new openness announcement is that they're building a $20 million certification lab. So I think we have to wait and see. Is the certification just something minimal that's needed to make sure it runs on the network, or will it be a tool and a lever they can use to continue to control to some extent the way these devices are designed and to somehow continue to separate the companies that make the software and the services and the hardware from the customers that use them. Personally, I'm very optimistic that that's not the case, but I'm just being a reporter a little bit skeptical that we have to wait and see. I think you also have to wait and see about things like pricing and service restrictions. They're not going to be subsidizing these phones. I personally am very confident that in an open world, Moore's Law brings the price down as it has with computers and digital cameras and every other digital product we've all observed in our lifetime. But how much will you be charged to use the network if you're a customer of one of these open handsets versus a customer who bought it at the Verizon store into the current subsidized system? It's all going to be very interesting.